Evening again. I'd like to call the committee of the whole for the Village of Cary for Tuesday, June 7th, 2022 to order with roll call, please.
Dudek?
Here.
McAlpine?
Here.
Collier?
Here.
Cavelli? Here. Walrath?
Here.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now moving to the public comment, where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. There's nobody here that would want to do that, so we'll go ahead and close that at 6:30. Moving forward to a discussion regarding parking restrictions on Industrial Drive. I should say the continuation of the parking on Industrial Drive. I'm assuming everybody, Eric's taking this, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is a continuation of some discussions we've had about the potential parking restrictions on Industrial Drive, following up from our conversations in April and May. Next slide, please. Just as a recap, this is the primarily focusing the section on Industrial Drive between Cary-Algonquin Road on the east and a little bit east of Reuben Lane on the west side. This image just shows the different locations of existing driveways, which are marked in the red X, and the loading docks that back up directly onto Industrial Drive with the letter yellow L. Next slide. So following the previous discussions, staff did take a look at the different options as well as the direction and the consensus that we had previously at the May meeting. This first slide here does depict what staff was directed to review, and that was keeping the no parking on both sides of the roadway, but highlighting some of the areas of the street where we would encourage the deliveries and the large trucks to stage and wait for spaces in the loading docks or the driveways. And those are the areas highlighted in yellow. And the signage with that option was to utilize a no parking, but noting that a loading zone with a 30-minute limit would be permitted. Following that meeting, we did look at the different pros and cons with that option. In summary, it does help. It does give a specific time limit, which is helpful for our police department in terms of enforcement. However, the limitations with that option, there are a decent number of signs still, and that was one of the concerns that we heard from the committee at the last meeting. The enforcement of this option does also carry with it some challenges, namely with a 30-minute limit. Once a complaint is made and an officer is arriving on scene, they would have to wait and witness that entire 30-minute period from the point they arrive. So it does kind of limit the effectiveness of how quickly the logjam of traffic might be cleared. And also in this option, there's still potential for trucks to load or stop or stand on both sides of the road, which does limit the ability for two-way traffic to occur at the same time, which is one concern for Cary Fire Protection District in particular. And next slide. So based on that last discussion, we did look at two final options that one made a strong attempt to reduce the number of signs that were needed to be posted for this roadway, and also to address the concerns that the previous option that we looked at with the loading zones would be that may not be entirely effective when implemented. So we looked at I think settled on two different options that would try and meet those two goals. This first one, labeled option B, was one of the previous staff recommendations back in our original November committee discussions and our December ordinance review. This did have no stopping, standing, or parking on the north side of the street. So this would keep the north side entirely clear, but then allow the entire south side of the roadway to have parking, loading, or staging. The one caveat, though, that we would be adding would be to make sure that overnight parking did not occur. So it would be parking allowed and staging allowed on the south side, but not overnight. Next slide. So this does have the most effectiveness in terms of making sure the road is clear. It does have the fewest number of signposts and new signs required. It is easiest for truck drivers that are not familiar with the area to understand, as it's very consistent across the entire north side of the roadway, and it's very specific of what you can do on each side of the road. Additionally, striping modifications could be made if we wanted to further clarify the location for that stopping, standing, or parking by striping out a parking lane on the south side and moving that center line, the double center line, to the northern third of the roadway. Next slide. And then the last option, which also does an excellent job of reducing the sign clutter in the corridor, would be to utilize the same no parking on both sides of the road that was originally approved and considered. However, we just reduce the number of signs, and then we would add supplementary plaques underneath some of these signs to denote for the truck drivers that stopping and standing is permitted. Next slide, please. Similar to the original option, this does have the benefit of less signs. It is clearer a message for the truck drivers. It improves the chances for two-way traffic to be maintained. However, it doesn't entirely eliminate it, because there's still the chance for trucks to be staged or stopped or waiting on both sides of the road at the same time. This does have the highest number of signs. While reduced from our original options, it is still more signs than the other two options. So with that, we'd like to get one last comments and feedback from the committee before we send some information out to the businesses along Industrial Drive and then move forward for an eventual ordinance amendment. So with that, Chief and I are happy to answer questions, and we welcome your feedback.
Staff has worked hard to reduce the number of signs. So we heard that loud and clear last time, and we made our best attempt.
What are new thoughts?
I'd start by saying I think that the best combination of all the concerned parties between the village staff, the committee, fire protection district, and the business owners, looking at all those pieces together, my thoughts would be behind option B, and I would probably weight that a little more heavily to the fire protection district and their requests and concerns, because our single highest priority is the public safety. So when you talk to the chief of police and you talk to the fire protection district, and that's the plan that adheres mostly to what they would like, I think that carries a lot of weight.
I would also second that. I think option B is the one that makes the most sense. And I do appreciate the amount of time you took to put together all the pros and cons, because it really made a lot of information easy to digest, and option B a no-brainer. So thank you for that.
I'll third it. I'm with option B also.
I agree. I'm with option B as well, and appreciate all the hard work that was put into this. It's not it's always ambiguous to try and figure out how things are going to work and how it's all going to flow together. And to be honest, part of me is like, do we really even have a problem? Do we really even need to do anything? But if we're going to do something, then to me, B would be the best option of these alternatives. But you made it very simple for us to be able to comprehend what all this meant. And I do appreciate lowering the amount of signs, because that was a big issue to me. I felt like it was signs everywhere.
I guess I'll bring up the rear. I too like option B. And Eric, just to ask, could you cover a little bit about this striping piece that you were talking about with moving a center line and putting some sort, what exactly are you talking about?
Courtney, if we could back up a couple slides. So in the 3D rendering in the lower left corner there, you can see currently the striping has a double yellow line in the center of the road. So it just bisects it equally. What we could do in the future would be to remove that center line and shift it, like I had mentioned, to the northern third of the road. So that way the two-way traffic is actually in the two northern lanes. It's very similar to what we have in our current striping for West Main Street, west of Carroll Algonquin Road, and also on Cimarron Drive. In that case, though, the parking lane is on both sides of the road. This one would only have the room for the one side of the street.
Have you ever seen this done, and then within that margin that you stripe, you paint no parking or something actually on the pavement? Have you seen that done to kind of complement the signs, or maybe even reduce the signs because it's on the pavement itself?
Not typically, maybe more in urban areas and downtown areas. we tend to try and minimize our amounts of striping and painting that we do because it does wear away so fast, so it becomes a pretty high maintenance item and a recurring cost. Whereas signs, they do last quite a long time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So with B option, are we gonna do this restriping or not? Or is it just under consideration?
Well, I think that it's.
Not right away.
That would be
I agree.
road signs first.
Make the changes, see if we need to do something more. If we do, great, keeping in mind that this is industrial.
Yeah, I know.
This isn't typically for, regular people aren't going to park their cars and do something there. It's an industrial park, so to speak. I'd rather just start this, and then if we, in the future, want to add something, another component to it, then we look at doing that.
Our plan too is, we wanted to get consensus on this, and we're gonna reach out to the businesses and just say, this is what we're looking to do, just so we don't go through what we did before and we sign it or get ready to sign it, and then we hear from those businesses. So there is that other step, that final feedback that we wanna get.
One question I had with regards to the overnight parking, instead of putting them throughout the street, can't we put one at each end of the street that covers us by saying the entire street or something? That way we don't have to add all these additional signs on that.
Yeah, we could consider that. It does make enforcement a little more challenging if it's such a long roadway. But, yeah, if that's the direction, we can try that out. And if we have an issue with it occurring frequently, we can always add signs after the fact.
Is there cars parked?
Do we have a problem now with it? Do we have cars parked there now? Is that something?
Well, I think
that's
there's
going
some trucks. Haven't there been trucks parking?
We did have a business that was parking some of their vehicles on the street on a pretty regular basis. They don't do it anymore, but they had in the past. And because we have overnight parking for about 66% of the year, or 66%, I thought it was important that we make sure that we did not permit overnight parking on this roadway. So it's an exception to the rule for any other roadway that's in the village of Cary.
Chief, from the mayor's question, because I appreciate what he's saying and I agree with that, but from a enforcement standpoint, what are your thoughts on having those no overnight parking signs on both ends?
Well,
'Cause I know you've shared those with me. Your
right.
thoughts.
Well, it's better in regards to notice, because what's important in regards to enforcement is individuals are noticed. I'm certain that we could make the argument that there's only one way in and one way out, so that they'd have to pass this sign, number one, and number two, we're passing an ordinance, so people should be aware of that as well. But it never hurts to notice people more, because it makes it easier to enforce. And I would defer to our attorney, Mr. Euler, to maybe further expound upon that.
I think you've explained it makes it simpler if you're trying to balance how many signs you'd like to post or not post. Somebody suggested we keep an eye on this and see if it's even a problem. Maybe that's the place to start. But yes, there's a legitimate argument. If you have to access this road from only 2 entrance points, and we post notices at those 2 points, that is a reasonably strong argument about notice.
Just a thought. I'll back whatever the board wants to do, but I just, the sign clutter in town, it just gets me crazy. But I understand from an enforcement point of view, we need to be consistent. I get that. Yeah, we'll try it. Everybody all right with
I
just
think we
trying out the entryways?
and if we have still an issue, then add more.
Well, you're gonna notice the businesses, and then we'll see, take it from there.
Yes, after the notice to the different businesses, we will come back with an ordinance amendment for village board consideration.
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate all of staff's work on this, Eric and Chief and Director Simmons too.
Yeah.
A
I
lot
agree.
of-
I know it was
A lot of work in the background, so.
a lot of back and forth, so thank you very much. Thanks to the board for dissecting it all. All right, next on the agenda, we have a discussion regarding a tax increment financing, which is typically known as a TIF district, Phase 1 proposal. I'm going to turn it over to Jake.
Mayor, Village Board, another continuation discussion. We've been chatting about TIF districts here at our previous meetings. We had a discussion on February 15th, as the committee is aware, and continued that on to March 1st, and we're here today to further our conversation about a potential new TIF district within the village. I have a couple questions that I included in the packet that I think the board has had a chance to review. Just to help us with our discussion today, I'll go through them here briefly, and we can circle back and get feedback from the board. But just want to make sure that the board's still interested in moving forward and talking about the possibility and reviewing our options for a new TIF district. Secondly, and we'll pull up on the screen here, is the general boundary, if the board is interested in looking to further a potential TIF district here within the village. We talked about this boundary at our last meeting, but is the board generally, and again, generally comfortable with these parameters that we've set up for this conceptual TIF 3? At our March 1st meeting, there was feedback about potentially including part of Park Avenue within there. Recall the comment was made, which is correct, about some of the stormwater challenges that we've had within that area. So that is certainly something that we can include in this draft boundary. And then finally, if the board is interested in proceeding here with this, I have attached as a part of the packet a engagement letter with Kane McKenna, who serves as our TIF consultant, what I'm considering as phase 1, where they would take the boundary, do preliminary work regarding eligibility of properties, site visits, historical data, they'd be gathering that. This phase 1 document that they've included includes 2 tasks. There's a task 1 that is the preliminary work. Task 2 really doesn't apply to us, so that we can, for the most part, disregard. So looking for the committee's feedback on those 3 items.
Let me reiterate what Jake had said. We are under no obligation to move forward if the majority of the board does not see that this is the direction they want to go, or if they want to pause on this, we can do that as well. We think it's best that we get your feedback and hear what your questions are, so that we can continue and get the information that you need to make an informed decision. But this is no way, shape, or form meant to be a commitment. This is part of the community discussion. There's no action being taken. We just want to hear what the committee has to say with regards to this.
First question.
Yes.
You spoke to the school again? Are they putting the property back on market? Yes or no?
They are still evaluating their options. Got that feedback yesterday.
So yes, we have.
Yep.
I would say that I think it behooves us to still go to the next level, because at some point, something should happen on Maplewood. I mean, we'd love to see it happen. The sooner the better. The economy is still there. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months to a year. But I'd rather be prepared than not prepared. And I think it's a big educational piece as to this is a financing mechanism to help villages. I went and I did a lot of research saw Palatine's and Arlington Heights and Fox River Groves and McHenry's and Huntley's and Crystal Lakes and Algonquins and Woodstocks to see what all they've been doing with them and the success that they've had. And I feel that there's not, there was a long time here where properties just sat vacant. Back in 2008, 2009, 2010, you just didn't have anything happening. And now we've seen a resurgence of some activity again. So I am open to taking it to the next level to see where we're at with this, because I think that it's going to be very difficult to ever develop Maplewood, for example, if we don't have some mechanism like this in place. You're not going to, for the price point, I don't see how it's going to ever happen if we don't have something like this to gather this. And I look at things like, Arlington Heights did 3 parking garages with one of their TIFs. Would we all love to have a big parking garage somewhere? I mean, I know it's kind of hard to envision where it would be, but boy, what a great thing Palatine did, that's how they did their indoor parking. I looked at how much, they did 975 residential, 93,000 square foot of restaurants, and then about 120,000 of professional offices. That's for their downtown TIF that they did. If you go down and look at Palatine, most people will get on the train and they'll be like, why can't we be like Palatine? Why can't we have these things? No one says we're ever gonna be exactly like that, we don't have the same footprint. But this is what these mechanisms are put in place for. And there are things, you know, Rick, we were talking about this, there are things in place for, whether it be the school district, whether it be for the fire district, when you're having additional services added on those, there's mechanisms in place within the actual statute that you can address that to help so that they're not overburdened with something that's going on. And I just think it's worth at least pursuing and getting a little more information on. That's just my thought on it.
Appreciate it.
Can I ask a question? Did any of those towns have anything negative to say about utilizing?
Well, you know, there were, I was gonna say there was, I think one of the articles I read was about, Huntley, there was some backlash with, they were concerned it was all residential was what they were doing their TIF for. So there was more of a concern from the school district. So it really kind of depends on what all you're proposing to do. And I think that's the biggest thing is you gotta have a plan. We can't just say, hey, we're gonna TIF things. There's gotta be a plan that says, what are we bringing in? Why are we doing this? And I think that the only adverse that I saw was with, when they were thinking it was all residential out there, there was some upset taxing bodies with that, thinking that they're gonna have all these additional services and not get any of the money from it. But again, in my research, and correct me if I'm wrong with my research, which is possible, it did look like there are mechanisms in place to help things like school districts or fire districts if what you're building, what comes out from this TIF adds additional burden on them, because we, of course, want to make sure that we're not tapping out their services that they can't provide things.
No, you're correct.
You're correct.
But I'll send you some of the stuff that I'll shoot out to everyone. Everyone can take a look at it. It's very interesting with the way that some of these, they approach it. To me, I think looking down the line, the train line, is a best option for us to look at because we are on the train line. So I'm not saying you can do everything, but you can emulate some of those things that have had success and say, how can we implement those in a smaller scale?
Trustee Baldwin?
As a village and as a board, there's only so many levers we can pull. We can't fabricate demand, but what we can do is prepare when there is some demand. And as evidenced by the research that Ellen just went through, there's a lot of very similar communities that have used this tool to help fund development. In that scenario, I am going to say I am definitely in favor of TIF for this area. And generally speaking, with the boundaries as they're drawn, the points that were laid out of having plans and having points of development. Obviously, Maplewood and the road, we've already learned what not having a road there is going to do to the development of that property. It's going to be a huge burden. So if we have a TIF and a plan in place to address that need, then I think that any developer is going to look forward to that. Floodway improvements were brought up from that particular area. That's also an issue on Park. Are the two connected? That's where we can discuss potentially changing the boundaries of the TIF to either include Park, or if floodway improvements with the Maplewood property would improve the problems across 14, potentially. So moving the boundaries of it, I don't think is the discussion for now. I think the discussion for now is, are we interested in exploring a TIF? And then what are the things that we want to do? Because that's part of the tasks assigned. What do we want to do with the TIF in general? So I am going to stand on being in favor of implementing a TIF similar to the one we've seen. And then the access road to Maplewood and the floodway improvements that go along with that are going to be the two major points that I want to address with any funds that come out of that TIF.
Okay, I agree. Trustee Collier?
I'm in favor. Same.
What do you think about the boundaries?
Like to keep them the same for now and see where we move forward. That could change with when we go to the
Right,
next
what,
step.
the next step, Kane McKenna, that's one of the processes that they'll go through is identifying the proper.
That would be the phase one work. So Kane McKenna, if we decide to move forward with Kane McKenna, they look at this conceptual boundary, come out, do site visits, grab historical data. We don't know if all these properties can be included. That's part of what their work is going to be.
TIF 2 is still there, active?
Yes, correct. Yep.
We would dissolve that.
Right, and TIF 3.
Right.
Yep. But we'd have, once all that research is compiled, Phil McKenna would come and present these findings to the village board. So that would be phase one. There would be a phase two that's a lot more involved, and that's when we get into the joint review board meetings, public hearings, public notices, notifying all the property owners within the potential TIF. But again, that's phase 2. That's a later discussion.
Would anybody be, Jake and I talk about this all the time, but I would really like to see it expanded a little bit to include our former TIF 1, part of that, with maybe even perhaps the east side, just maybe the east side of Route 14, where we have some of the property that we own, and then going into Jack's Channels, which abuts up to Arlington Club. If that's, I mean, that's a prime opportunity for us development-wise.
I wouldn't disagree with that at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. It's just, I mean, is there anything with regards to how big of a footprint the TIF can be? I'm just curious. Is that?
Well, I'll tell you,
Because I see other places like they'd have a downtown TIF, then they'd have a TIF on,
they
you
have
know,
many
different
different
areas, so
ones,
they'd have different TIF areas. I'm just curious, do you do it under one umbrella, or do you need to separate it? I just don't know.
the city of Woodstock has a 900-acre TIF. That's pretty much a
It's a
lot.
blank canvas.
Yeah, it's big.
It's driven by the analysis that Kane McKenna will do, so there is no size limit, except the further you expand a TIF, the more likely it is that you make it vulnerable somewhere.
Right.
To a potential challenge if somebody says it doesn't meet the statutory criteria across the entire expanse. And at some point, it doesn't meet the criteria across the entire expanse because not all property is eligible for a TIF. But it's driven by their analysis, essentially.
We put this together, Director Simmons and I, and you know, again, it's the first blush. Mostly Director Simmons put this together, and I tend to agree with it. But looking at some of these plans that we've approved previously, our comprehensive plan, our downtown strategic plan, those are kind of the guiding documents that we're using, because that was, we've gotten community feedback of this is what we want, and we're trying to implement those. Floodway improvements, to redevelopment of Maplewood property, downtown improvements have been through these open houses. That's been a lot of the feedback, and so that is how we've kind of structured this, is focuses on downtown, focus on Maplewood, and some of these areas that maybe need a little bit of TLC. So that's the background behind how this was developed.
Trustee Dudek?
I could have a meeting just on this. I would put all of it together into one. And I mean, I remember walking Jack's Channels with Lamal. That's a long time ago. Still looks exactly the same. That would likely have a component of residential. I don't know how much, but some. It's clear to me that the lack of activity, positive activity on Maplewood has hurt this community for 10 years, and something's got to happen there. I think most people on the board, maybe everybody on the board, feels the same way. I do, believe, and I've always believed, that the village is going to have to make some investment to move Maplewood if we don't buy it specifically and have it under our control. And part of that investment might be putting that road in ourselves so that it's there already for somebody to buy the property. From what I read in the very brief summary here, I don't pretend to be a TIF expert, but it would seem to me that maybe that would be something we might want to look at to improve that access to that property to the point where that's an off-the-table conversation for any developer to come in, to make it easier to move this. Because it's a sin. It's a financial sin for 10 years for that to have been sitting the way it is. Doesn't help the community one bit. And the same thing I would say about TIF 1. There's a lot of opportunity over there, and we, as elected officials, I think, have to do whatever we have in our power. We don't have a ton to make it attractive. So
I agree.
Those are my comments. Same ones I've had for over 10 years.
With regard to your first comment, the Maplewood Access Road, we have included that in the budget to kind of take the lead on that and potentially get it done ourselves. It's not something that's gonna happen overnight, though. That's gonna be a multi-year project that Tim is gonna work on here, so, we'll get him right in there right away.
But we did budget, what, 140,000?
Yeah, for the phase one work, we budgeted, 130,000, plus or minus for that project. If the board is interested in moving forward with this engagement letter with Kane McKenna, we'd have this on a upcoming, village board agenda. As a part of that too, we'd have a reimbursement resolution to, pay ourselves back for that, the road, some of these, the Kane McKenna work, once the TIF would be up and running. So that would be in combination that we'd approve that Kane McKenna agreement and that reimbursement resolution. Does that help, Trustee Dudek?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What funds are left in 1 and 2 right now?
One is.
Well, one's been
closed.
closed. Yeah, we closed out one. You know, TIF 2 was plus or minus $100,000, I think, in increment. It might be a little bit more than that, so, yeah. Yep.
Trustee Cavelli, any thoughts?
So with TIF 1 closed, how long was that TIF?
23.
3 years?
23 years. So in 23 years, what came about during that 23 years' time? Like, when we talk about implementing a TIF 3 and what sort of development would occur and everything else, in that 23 years' time, what did we get out of that TIF district?
Yep, a couple of the big projects that we did, the road, Jandis Cutoff Road. I don't know if board members remember what that used to be, but that was a failing road that wasn't able to service the industrial park, and so that road was pretty much realigned, rebuilt. We also had a wastewater improvements. We added a lift station to the Selkie property to help with future development for that property, so that those property, or those future uses are able to tie into that lift station, which is in the southern portion of the property. Those were the most significant. There's been others, but those improvements have dramatically helped for the redevelopment of the Selkie property. And then for that matter, even further with that lift station, those properties that are across 14 now just have to get under 14 to tie into that lift station. Before, it would have been a much longer run.
Okay, so ideally, I think what I'm hearing is you'd want to potentially move TIF 1 back, or make that a TIF again and put it with 3?
I would like to say, it'll come out, it'll be fleshed out when Kane McKenna does our analysis, but and if you're gonna do it, we gotta do it. I mean, these are prime opportunities for us to develop, and that's the whole reason that we're doing this.
Well,
So-
that's what I'm hearing, and I want to see the area developed as well. I just want to make sure that, you know, if we're going to go to this extent, that, you know, in 20 years' time, that you see progress as a result of it. So I don't have an issue with doing the TIF districts. The only thing I would say is I'd like to just be good partners with, you know, school district, fire department, just make sure that, you know, we maintain those partnerships for
Right.
future, you know, issues and everything else, and so.
Well, we want to kind of lead the path here, kind of, and be proactive with our conversations that we have and educate. It has a lot to do with education. If we've learned anything, well, if I've learned anything from being mayor for my 10th year now, that you have to educate everybody. Everybody has got to be on the same page and dealing with the same facts. And I say this time and time again when I give presentations or I talk to developers or whatever, you know, development is like a three-legged stool. It can only stand if you've got a willing participant in a developer, landowner, and a municipality. If you don't have all three, it's not going to stand. So we need to work continuously, like what I had mentioned before, and some of these things with this economic development person, is to get everybody on the same page, have everybody understand we're here to help. These are the tools that we have in the toolbox. People tend to forget that a TIF district only affects everybody else, but it affects us. We don't get that increment anymore to offset our expenses that we have. We don't get that anymore either. So for that, you know, and again, you have to remind people that the actual taxpayer doesn't see a difference. They continue to pay their taxes. It's just the increment that goes into a different fund. What we can do, just to reiterate what Trustee McAlpine has, just so the employees, and we have the fire district here too, we have the ability to channel additional funds through the TIF for processes that, or things that you may need to offset expenses that you're incurring due to a TIF district. We're able to do that. So I think that we've made it very known that we have these capabilities, and I think we've got a good reputation with the taxing district, especially District 155. They love working with us. They, look what we were able to do with that property on Carroll-Algonquin Road. They were very easy to work with, and they appreciate it because now that property's on the tax rolls and everybody is going to benefit from it. So we have to look at this in with clear eyes and clear focus, and have an understanding of if we're going to do this, we have to all do this together. And that is going to be our priorities. Jake and I we've talked about that's a priority at us to make sure that everybody is on the same page all the time. So,
Mayor, I just comment, and I don't remember, somebody mentioned about housing or what's going on along the rail lines. When I look at the limited amount of housing that have been built in this town since I've lived here in 20 years, the only project that stalled was Westlake, and that was because of,
the economy.
worldwide, or at least the United States-wide, real estate recession. And once things got better, I mean, look at it now. Every other project sells pretty quickly. And I can't, for the life of me, imagine something right in the core of downtown with the improvements that this board and previous boards have made in downtown, wouldn't find that exact same pattern of occupancy happening, whether it's a buy or it's a rent. People seem to want to live here, and everything we've put up has gone really well. To me, I see, both as a finance person and as a resident here, I see very little risk in residential housing downtown, very little. So I just want to throw that out because, to me, if Maplewood was not Maplewood, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Right.
So we all know why we're having the conversation about TIF. We should make it very clear. And that's housing for people. It's new residents to town. It's new opportunities for income. So those are all the things in my mind that are behind this.
I agree. I think this has been, it's great to hear everybody. I believe Trustee Weinhammer's on the same page in the conversations I've had with her before. So I think that we have a consensus to move forward with the agreement. Jake?
Would we like to explore getting to the Jack's Channels property then?
Yes, I would. I'm for that. I
Because
mean, they could come back and say no, but
yeah, I don't think that they're going to allow true value in there. So
I think those are all the decisions or the conversations we'll have to have after we've already seen their data. It's
Yeah.
just pure speculation to do anything before then.
The industrial.
No,
I don't think so because it's not undeveloped or blighted.
it's not blighted at all.
But, we'll see. Kane McKenna will do a good job on our behalf to see where it goes.
Yep.
Any other comments about this? You need anything else? With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 7:07.